Welcome back, everybody, to the Sexy Business Podcast, the only podcast that talks about all of the cool and interesting new porn that is coming your way. As always, I am your host, Spooky Dangerous, and joined with me is Lewd Neko. Say hello.
Hello.
And this time, we have a very special episode for you. We've actually partnered with spicygaming.net, a new store that's its goal is to be able to deliver and sell porn games specifically, something that THM actually was like a really early adopter of. All of our games are on there already. And they reached out looking for people that do content like this on YouTube or whatever to talk about games that are going onto the platform and doing well. And so they supplied us with Steam keys for Shattered Minds, which is the spicygaming.net game of the month. It's currently available on spicygaming.net, itch.io, Patreon, Substar, your mother's disk drive, a whole bunch of places. But also comes out on Steam, the main platform, on the 4th of April. So we got a special access Steam key to come through and play the game. And now we've both put a couple hours into this, and we're basically going to give you a quick summary of what the game is about and then talk about our first impressions at the end, because it is a bit of an interesting game. And yes, I know this is something different from us because it's a more of an organized review than us picking it, but I promise this is not going to be a glaze. I actually walked into this game wanting to hate it because I'm kind of a 3D render hater, just generally. And so I loaded the game with a big frown on my face and was actually kind of impressed by the time I got to the end of the time I put aside for it. But let's give kind of a brief summary of the plot. You're a high school student. I think you're in your final year of high school in this fucking regional hick town in America, I think it is. And you're the nerdy guy that has like no luck with women and all this kind of stuff. And you have your best friend who's worse off than you. You live with your roommate and landlady while you go to high school. And maybe 10 minutes into the game, it's revealed to you that superhuman powers are kind of awakening, and a whole bunch of other people, kind of have superpowers and stuff. And you discover in yourself that you have the ability to kind of mind control people, but it's like you say things to them and they kind of obey. And then once that power is unlocked in you, you are met with your sexy alter ego, Ava, who lives in a mirror in your room, and she kind of instructs you and walks you through how all this stuff kind of works, and is trying to help you build your harem of slaves. Kind of, you can actually dictate what they're called, but it's not super specific. Did I miss anything super important there?
I think you got all of it, although technically they are in college because of legal reasons.
Yes, of course. Everyone is above the legal age. It very, very much reads as a high school, like all the backgrounds and stuff.
Oh, no, it definitely does.
But they're doing that legal hoops to not be banned off Patreon, which I get. It's fine. It's not a big deal. I went to a college which was a high school. It just had a different name, right? It's just whatever. Just kind of read it as a regional difference. But yeah, let's kick off with some first impressions. So what was your kind of first playthrough like? And also, which routes did you pick? Because we tried to pick different routes.
Yeah, so I was in the same boat as you when I first started this, where I have talked about this on stream. I'm just not a fan of the realistic looking visual novels. I think they're usually called adult visual novels, like AVNs is usually the term used for more like of the Western style, like 3D model with like realistic proportions type of game. And I just don't like them for the reason that like I don't like real people porn either. So I don't want a game that's trying to look like that. I much prefer usually 2D art or like really good 3D animations. So I was initially set up as well to be like, this game is going to be garbage, or we're going to have to pretend to like it or something. But no, I actually enjoyed the kind of like sneak peek or demo I almost got of it. I unfortunately didn't have a ton of time to play through it, but I sort of got through like what might be considered the prologue that introduces the basic gameplay loop, and I got to explore a little bit of the landladies around. Literally like the first, I guess, like technical, sex scene or intimacy scene with her. And I like messed around a little bit with some of the other characters just to see what they were on. The basic gameplay is that this is a stat raiser to an extent. I would say, based on what I noticed about its gameplay system, it's not a super hard or challenging stat raiser. Some stat raisers have like, time limits or like fail conditions, for example, where like, oh, if you don't do this by X date, you will never get that scene. The only examples I can think of that are there are some scenes where if you don't have the right stats during that scene, you can potentially miss out on some bonus CGs because you didn't have, your various brain stats at 3 or something like that. But that's really easy to go back and try it again if you are like a completionist. You can always just like save scum or just skip through all of the text and get the scenes that you want. But overall, it was not a system that made me feel frustrated because I typically don't like stat raisers because I usually find them annoying. But this one is actually pretty intuitive. It has many ways that it can tell you what to do, even if you do get stuck. Like at one point, I had to hire an escort for plot reasons, and I wasn't sure how to do that. And so I was able to look in the quest log, and it was like, you have to go to your computer and do that. And I was like, okay, thank you.
Amazing. I will say that there is a lot of kind of technical stuff implemented into it to make the quest log really easy. There's an app on your phone which is a radar that tracks the location of every single person in the game, so that you can always find where they are. Because sometimes they're not always just hanging out in the same spot. There is a pretty rudimentary quest log thing where it's going to kind of tell you what you need to do next, or if there's another quest you need to complete first before coming back to that. And you can also talk to Ava in her weird mirror dimension thing and ask her for help on what you're doing as well. So I never actually felt lost in what I was doing ever in the 200 bit hours that I played.
Oh yeah, it's pretty like intuitive for the most part of like where you need to go or who you need to talk to. During the beginning section, it is a little bit more railroady because there's a couple of like of the main sort of story beats that you have to hit, I'm guessing, first before you start exploring side characters and some of the other like not your sister or your mom NPCs. But aside from that, it seems like it kind of opens up a little bit more so you can have that open world experience of exploring the girls that you like the most, or focusing on their stats and then exploring some of the other ones. And I was looking into some of the like long-term gameplay things, and I will say there is a pregnancy mechanic in this game, which I don't think either of us got far enough to encounter. But if you are a impregnation fan, this is like the actual pregnancy. You get to see them be pregnant and have kids, and you don't actually have to deal with the kids from what I've heard. I've read through some threads. Apparently you can like make money with them somehow, I guess, by raising them or something. But so it's mostly like an aesthetic or kind of like fetish based if you just like the idea of like, I can make this girl have a bajillion babies.
Yeah, the natural conclusion of a harem is having 100 children.
We have to populate this small town, make it bustling.
For real. Tell me a little bit more about the landlady. What was running through that route like?
So it was actually kind of surprising. I think typically when so I should also say I'm not a huge fan of mind control games or hypnosis or whatever you want to call it. And it's not because I don't like the fetish. It's because I don't like how it's portrayed in games and most fiction. I've done like real erotic hypnosis, and the actual appeal for me to me is like, oh, this is a thing that can happen in reality. Obviously, it's not in the way you see in these mind control games. The biggest thing is like, and this game kind of gets this correct, is like you fundamentally can't make someone do something they actually don't want to do. Like if even if you put someone into hypnosis, if you tell them to like hurt themselves or do something crazy, their conscious mind will just naturally like lock in and be like, no, no, thank you. For the most part, like especially with like erotic hypnosis, it's exactly what this game is doing, where like you're giving suggestions that are things that it sort of implies they want to do deep down, or maybe they just needed a little bit of a push. So for example, with like the mom character, typically when we see mind control and like incest or stepcest dynamics, it's the whole idea is like, oh, it would actually realistically be hard to just convince your mom to have sex with you, but if you can mind control her, it becomes super easy. However, in this case, it's a little bit different. So Ava mentions early on that she gave a special lotion to your mom, and apparently this is some sort of like pheromone lotion, like sex horny lotion that makes her horny all the time when she uses the lotion. And so basically your mom, who has presumably just been had like a dead bedroom for her entire life, I guess, aside from having you, um, finally starts feeling horny again and then starts to associate that with you. And she sees you at a certain point getting a blowjob for plot reasons and gets turned on and is like, I can't stop thinking about you. And what you use your mind control for during that scene is mostly just to get her to keep talking of like, "Oh, you were talking about being horny for me. Keep doing that." So it's not like, "Oh, I need you to instantly take off all of your clothes and have sex with me." It is more of like the gradual corruption, but it was a little surprising that like already at the beginning of the mom's plotline, she's already kind of on board. From what I've heard, it's this sister who is more of the like the resistant one, where they're going to be like, ew, no, what the fuck? And then you get to have the appeal of corruption is at the end. They'll be like, ah, you're so sexy.
Yeah, so I played through Sarah's route, and she is the new girl at school, and then you kind of bump into her and you say hi, and she's like, "Wow, nobody else ever talked to me. Let's be best friends." And then you basically go on a couple of dates, and then she reveals to you that she's a lesbian, and that's the reason why she moved to the new town. She got kicked out. She got expelled from the last school, and her parents really disapprove of her being gay and stuff like that. And you're like, "Wow, I'm gonna be a good friend, and I'm gonna be here for you for that." And also, damn, I'm really upset that we can't fuck. And it's like, okay, that's a really random problem to be thinking about during this time. But then you use the mind control to basically um, convince her that making you happy is the same as receiving her father's approval,
Oh God.
and she wants to do anything she can to make you approve of her to receive that same approval. And you just basically find a workaround for her being gay. And then when you complete her route and she becomes your harem slave, you're like, "Are you still attracted to women?" And she's like, "Yes, but you come first before all of them for me." And it's like, okay, you kind of used your magic powers to turn her straight for you. And it's really, I don't know, it's really weird. It's handled, I think, gracefully, but the genre, the topic of it, is like really weird to kind of get your head around initially. Um, but it feels like you go on a series of dates. She becomes closer to you. You become good friends, and then like that again, that hang up that she has to overcome is the thing that you accomplish using the mind control. It's not, like you said, instant. It is still kind of like a dating sim where you're engaging with a lot of different characters and getting to know them better, and then using that superpower that you have to overcome any specific inhibitions or boundaries or whatever towards that. Which I
Man,
think is
listening to that,
interesting.
I was just like Freud is like rolling in his grave
Yeah,
hearing about that plot line.
I know.
Um, I mean, I do think it's a good thing to point out, though, that like this isn't. It was really interesting. I was reading through like the F95 zone thread, and people were debating whether or not this would be like technically a quote unquote like rape game. Because when we think about those, we typically think of like Riona, where it's like usually really violent. It's usually very much like a aggressor victim scenario. And hypnosis and mind control is always in that like sticky, like it's kind of consensual, kind of not. Like the big reason why hypno as a term, you don't see it a lot on like Patreon or Steam or things like that, is because credit card companies have agreed that hypnosis is non-consensual. In reality, that's not exactly how it works. You negotiate beforehand and everybody consents. But in fiction, obviously, the appeal is like, oh, you could just get someone to go against what they actually want to do or things like that. And while this game isn't the worst, I would say, when it comes to like consent and mind control fiction, because it has that element of like the characters are kind of into it, or it's a more gradual progression, as opposed to like the typical scenario I see is like there's a lot of hentai that's centered around like the hot popular girl rejects you, and so you take out your mind control phone and you instantly mind control her, and now she is sucking your dick in the hallway in front of everybody, and you get to humiliate her. Like that is like the very common, I think, mind control scenario I see, where it's usually also framed as revenge. And while here you do kind of have a main character who is able to get revenge in some ways, like on like bully characters and stuff like that, for the most part, and maybe this will change as the game progresses, he's not like super evil, so you don't have to feel as icky about it. But there might be some scenes, if you are someone who is a bit like sensitive to dubious consent, that could be a little icky, like with like this character where you're kind of altering her sexuality to an extent. I guess it's technically forced by, which is a very
Yeah.
common thing in hypno, but it's usually the genders are reversed.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's super horrible, but like as you're starting to go down that plot line, you go, "Oh, this is a bit dubious." Um, I did make a whole bunch of other notes just generally as I was playing through that I did kind of want to go through, because I think there's a lot of little bits and pieces that the game deserves props for. This is the first game I've ever seen that has a unique volume slider just for sex moans. As a porn on mute kind of person, I appreciate this kind of thing if I do actually want to be hearing some things. But most of it was just kind of background music, and there's like a lot of unique background music to different characters and locations and stuff, as well as background sound effects. So weirdly, there is a lot of attention to detail in different things put into the game, and unlike a lot of games that kind of release into early access that are a bit small, this game does feel pretty large. Like I put 200 bit hours into it, and I didn't feel like I was bumping up against the end. I had literally stopped playing right as a new major plot point was starting to unravel, where I was like, no, I don't want to have to play through this whole thing. That's okay. I already got the lesbian to be part of my harem. I think I'm done. What else have we got? It has in-game pop-ups for Steam achievement notifications. So I think that means that if you're playing it on any platform, the achievements are universal. But if you're playing it on Steam, it gets like the Steam pop-up as well as the in-game pop-up. But I thought that was kind of cool that it's like still tracking achievements regardless of what platform you're playing it on. So like still has that same sort of effect. There's also a parallax effect in the game where the character and the background will shift slightly if you move the mouse over them to create a sort of pseudo 3D effect. And they mention it several times in the game, and they're like, "Do you want to turn this off?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And like, "Cool, but here's where you can turn it back on again." I'm like, "All right, sure." Maybe in the sex scenes or something, it does more for me. But I was kind of like, I'm not really that interested. There's lots of little like mini game type things in it, or like mini adventures. At one point, to do this big level up milestone thing, Ava takes you on this weird medieval adventure where you have to defeat an evil wizard guy, and to do so you have to increase your mind control powers enough to defeat him in a battle. And there's a mini game in it where you have to go to different It's like a bureaucracy nightmare. There's 4 different desks, and you have to fill out a form. And then they're like, no, wait, to get this form, you have to fill out this other form from this other desk, and it repeats in the whole segment. If you're literally just clicking constantly, goes for about 5 minutes, which is kind of crazy if you stopped and read every single thing. And yeah, it's just, I don't know. There's a mini game as well that's revealed to you early on that you can steal undergarments from your roommate and landlady to sell online for money, which I thought was also strange. I feel like they would figure that out pretty quickly, that was what was happening.
Like, oh, all of my underwear is gone mysteriously.
Yeah, and also, why did you show up in a Bentley? Like, so it would be kind of silly. I did want to go back onto the stat crunching gameplay and kind of expand on that a little bit, because there's like 2 main things, and then one of them has like a subset. One of the main things is money, which I ended up getting a job at the cafe. If you follow along Sarah's route, you get a job at the cafe, and you can work a half day, which is literally just like clicking one button, and it's kind of automatic, and then receive a paycheck. Or you can choose to play the working at the cafe mini game to potentially get more money. So there's a few options where you can click the fast thing for less rewards, but takes less time. And then the second major one is your actual personal level of your superpower, where you get, every time you level up, you get skill points that you can spend on one of 3 attributes. And I think those 3 attributes align with specific characters' routes to determine whether or not you're strong enough to overcome their particular thing that you're trying to mind control out of them. In doing Sarah's route, I never came up to a point where it was like, you need more of this. The only gate was I had to raise her corruption level, which just meant I just had to blast her a couple of times with my mind powers and then come back later. But for other ones, I think there might be like characters that are more resistant to it and require a specific skill level to break through. And as you level up higher, you can use the mind control more times per day. And when you hit a limit, you can drink an energy drink to get 1 additional time. But if you start to use it too many times, your vision starts to blur and the game starts to get glitchy and stuff until you go to sleep next. So it feels like they've really handled how much you're using the things. You can't like kind of speed run through segments or whatever, but you can kind of use it enough to push things along a bit faster, I think. There's one character in the park where each character has like a corruption level of 100, and for her, you just basically show up every day, use your mind corruption once, and like slowly she's like a hippie character. You're trying to convince her that you know everything about nature and life, and that you should be her guru or whatever. And then as you slowly corrupt her, she'll do more things, more nude things and more lewd things with you, and it's kind of like becomes a resource that you can spend once you know where you're spending it and how much time you have per day. So it becomes a bit more like a calendar game rather than a stat raiser, where you're trying to efficiently spend your time in each day when you know, oh, the next thing I have to do is on Sunday anyway. I have 4 days. I might as well go and, mind blast a few people here and there, which I think works fine. The only grindy part about that was going home and going to bed after each day, because it's open the map, click on my house, click on upstairs, click on the bedroom door, click on the bed, click go to sleep. And you're doing this like, every day. And it's like, okay, look, this should probably have an easy shortcut button. Or like other games have a shortcut at the end automatically that will take you to bed.
There kind of is. If you fast forward time to night, it gives you a button that says, do you want to go to bed? So I guess you could, it depends on how many clicks you want to do.
Because I would get to the end of something and I would try to do a task and it says you can't do this because you should go to bed instead. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll go to bed. So maybe I missed it. But everything else seems like it's pretty streamlined. You accrue XP for your personal level by using your Mind Blast thing, but you can also train with Ava in the mirror dimension. And when you do that, you can do a Simon Says minigame, or you can skip it and get a random amount of XP instead. If you do the Simon Says minigame, it's 100 XP, which I think is a level every time. But if you skip it, you get a random number between 0 and 100. And I got like 40 to 50 most of the time. So it was like, well, look, if this saves me 5 minutes, then, like if my intent was to 100% the game to come and talk about it on the show, then yeah, I would spend the time investing and max out my character level. But we're just trying to like play through a route and get like a vertical slice of everything so we can come and talk about it. I'm like, well, I want to skip time as much as possible, And I know that some people that are like, man, I'm already halfway to blasting ropes. I don't want to be sitting here looking at the inventory screen while I'm trying to figure out how to do that. And there's like lots of other goofy humor stuff in the game. I watched an extended segment that was a Pirates of the Caribbean parody, which includes hand-drawn crab and octopus fighting with swords with orchestral parody music of the theme song as well. Like it has all the same notes, but it's the wrong instrument, so it sounds different. And it's supposed to be Pirates of the Caribbean 9, and they're like making fun of it a lot while they're supposed to be having sex in the movies or whatever. And so it feels like there's definitely some reference and goofiness. And I think Ava has a couple of comedic moments as well, which is kind of torturing you, the main character, until you kind of figure it all out. But that's kind of, I think it's the idea of it being such a big open world game is that it needs to, have light moments. It needs to have more serious moments. Like I sit down and have dinner with Sarah's parents, and it's like, okay, how do I not fuck this up so I can still have sex with this person afterwards, and stuff like that. Where like I can't just mind control the parents. This is my first time meeting them and stuff like that. And then I kind of completed my run by adding the first person to the harem, and they kind of explain like you can make her just earn money for you instead of having to do it yourself. You can intentionally get them pregnant or not. And then it was implied, especially with Sarah, because she's into women as well, that if I had added other members to the harem, that she would come and join us and do group stuff. I don't know if that much has been implemented in the game just yet. I haven't gone through and played a second round to be able to figure that out. But I think the goal is that eventually a full game complete percent would look like you having a harem of like, I think 7 people currently, maybe more in the future. Because there's a big gym area, which all listed as coming soon. There's a few characters. Neko sent me the roadmap before, which lists a few of the characters from the gym, with June, the concierge, and Zoe, who's from the spa, who are coming soon. And I think they're supposed to be able to, join your harem as well. And they look really cool. I'm really interested to see what happens with them as well. I ran to check them out, and I was like, no, coming soon.
Yeah, the Steam page says 13 main girls to corrupt and more to come plus side characters. So
it's a big harem.
It seems like they're planning definitely to add in some more. Now let's talk really briefly about like the actual sexy content. I only saw like one scene, and like a little bit of nudity. I know you got to see a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think overall these are definitely really high quality animations. Like there's actual like I think both you noted this and I also noted this when I was watching. There's foreskin physics.
Yes.
I always notice this. I think I noticed this with Pig Princess too. I was like, oh my gosh, did you see they changed the art to show the foreskin? So that's there. The jiggle physics makes sense. They're not like insane and like over the top, but they're also not like, Barbie dolls or anything like that. There's some nice like clothing physics as well, even in just like the CGs. The characters designs all look nice. Again, it's still not my style because I'm into like anime girls, but they are definitely very cute. They have like a lot of diversity when it comes to like their faces and hairstyles and kind of like body types. Though this game definitely does lean a little bit more in the big titty direction. And there's like a lot of scenes that focus on big titties, which again is a point for I think most people in this audience. Not a point for me though. And then like I said, the actual sex scenes are pretty nice. They usually have a couple different angles you can look at it from, and you get to decide when the cum happens, so you can kind of jerk your shit and then finish whenever you're done. So overall, I think this is pretty good when it comes to the NSFW department. Even though I only saw one scene, it was a very nicely done scene.
a pleasant hand job. So yeah, that does kind of bring up an interesting point to add, is that it takes a long time to get to where you start encountering adult content. I made a note, and my whole first hour of playing the game had no adult content in it, which is a complaint that we've made against other games in the future, in the past. Yeah, I will complain about it in the future. But I think because this game is aiming to be so large that if it's like there's no adult content in the first percent, then like the number is lower. I played through Sarah's route, which I think has 4 scenes. And the first one is like you both get wet in the rain, and she comes back to your apartment, and the whole scene is like a 3-second animation of her sitting up on the bed or something like that, and has like a jiggle physics with that. And it was everything else before then had been like static images of the 3D characters that blink. And then having just her randomly sit up in the bed, I was like, oh, is something happening right now? And there's a few like literal moments like that where you will get a little bit extra in when something is happening to kind of exaggerate it. But it's like the main sex scenes. I had one with her where we mucked around in the cinema, and she comes and sits on your lap and like it jerks your shit a little bit. And then we have like at the conclusion of the route, like a full penetration scene where you get multiple camera angles, but you only do it in one position, which is kind of my main complaint. But the thing is, in that moment, you're like, I've finished mind controlling you. We've had the sex. I'm now programming you for how you're going to act and be in my harem and how you're going to obey me and stuff in the future. It made sense for there to be a break in there, and also for you to like blast your shit kind of quickly, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I did notice in like the threads, people were saying that although there's a lot of different animated sex scenes with all the different girls, there are like a couple of positions that get repeated again and again, like kind of your basic like missionary cowgirl doggy and like hand job blow job sort of stuff. Which I'm guessing is just because it must be a very time consuming process to animate all these scenes and get them looking nice from different angles and things like that. And this game is also pretty early on in development, despite being in development for a couple of years now. It's at like technically like version like 0.2 almost. So there's definitely still a lot more that's going to be added. It seems kind of almost like Harem Hotel, where it's a very long running game that has a pretty extensive story and lore and lots of characters. So this is definitely one where like you are getting in early, so you can kind of stick around and get some updates like every month or two and continue the story bit by bit. This isn't one where I would necessarily expect it to be reaching its full release anytime soon.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I feel like there's definitely a play pattern here that can benefit you as the user, where you pick the characters that have a complete route, you go and complete them, they become a harem member, they join you, and then you wait until the next update and go and collect the new people as they come out, right? And then you get to see the overlap and how they all come together and that way, because like you already have part of it fully done, you'll have a lot of your leveling and stuff, and your powers increased when the new content comes out. So I think that it already felt like a big game. I didn't feel like I was really bumping up against any walls or ceilings, with the exception of the gym area, which is denoted as coming soon. And the roadmap already has like a whole bunch of stuff on it for what is coming soon. So it is very much being worked on. There is very much stuff coming soon. And using something like Steam, where you're going to get those automatic updates and nice little devlogs and stuff, isn't a terrible choice. Now that's Shattered Minds. I actually was pleasantly surprised. There was like a moment in it, right, where I was like, man, this is kind of cringe. Oh man, this dialogue. Oh, I can't believe they said the word tenterhooks. And then comes a point where I'm like, okay, actually, I'm more engaged in the story. Like Ava is kind of revealed, and she starts messing with the main character and starts like actually properly explaining how the game mechanics and stuff work. So it is a little bit of a slow start, but once you kind of actually start having the game open it up and figure out what you're doing, because the tutorialization is actually like really good, and like getting you understanding of what you're supposed to be doing and where you're going and stuff like that. Because directionlessness in games is one of my big icks. And so once you actually start eating through the content, it starts like really picking up and is really good. And so I would recommend this game. And so it's fun for me to get the partnership from SpicyGaming.net, someone that we've worked with in the past on other stuff, and a platform that I would like to see succeed, because in problems that, and we've talked about this previously on the show, when one platform is kind of the everything go-to, kind of like Patreon is, and then they go, nah, we're not going to allow this kind of content like dogcock. It just kind of has to vanish or find a new home. And then having some platforms like spicygaming.net, which are made specifically for porn content, are going to have a better understanding of what kind of things these fantasies entail or how it's supposed to be handled, and they can have a better conversation with the creators to, make it be a better platform to be used. So I was excited to get this opportunity to come and look at this game. I had fun playing. I put 2 hours into it when I thought I probably would just put 1. My time is precious. You know how it is. I'm always writing that new THM game update together for everyone, sending messages to the artists, be like, no, make the honkers bigger, I tell you. But that's kind of it. That was Shattered Minds. And look, if you're interested in checking out this game for yourself, it's available on Steam on the 4th of April, or it's already on itch.io. It's already on spicygaming.net. It was Game of the Month. I think they have a Patreon and a Substar as well, so you can go and check those out. And then that's kind of it from us here at the Sexy Business Podcast. This is a cool episode for us because we, get to work with people that aren't just other creators. We get to work with a platform for a change. And, hopefully they're going to see this and like our content and start working with us a bit more to help us deliver some hot and upcoming games for you, or maybe help us get that exclusive so we can be showing off stuff for you. And so that means to help us help you, the viewer, hear about the cool games that are coming up so that you can beat your meat more efficiently, any cum percent basically, you got to hit that subscribe button and then get in the comment section and be like, wow, this was such a fantastic episode. Spicygaming.net should absolutely definitely work with you guys more often because you're the best and I love you. You're my favorite. And also I want to join your harem. And then your full legal name and address and credit card number and CCV on the back. That should be every comment. I'll be really disappointed if we don't get any. But then we'll see you in the next episode where hopefully we've got some more exciting stuff cooking up for you to come and check out here on the Sexy Business Podcast.
Bye-bye.